The Church in the DR Congo, A Personal Perspective. Part 2, Snapshot of the Church in the DR Congo. Like most members, Kathleen and I knew very little about the Church in the DR Congo when we received our call. Fortunately, we had some sweet visits with my former mission president, Virgil John Parker, with whom I had served 40 years earlier in France and Belgium. He and his wife Jackie had later served in the late 1980s as senior missionaries in the DR Congo, helping to establish the church in the city of Lubumbashi. He is currently 93 years old, about 6 months younger than President Russell M. Nelson. We learned that the DR Congo is located at the heart of French Central Africa, surrounded by other countries with French as an official language, including the Republic of Congo, Gabon, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Rwanda, and Burundi. We learned that French is an official language for more of Africa than any other European language, having been spread during the colonial years by France and Belgium not only in Central Africa, but also in wide swaths of West and North Africa. We learned that there were actually two Congos, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, a former Belgian colony, and the Republic of the Congo, a former French colony. The capitals of these two countries, Kinshasa and Brazzaville, respectively, sit directly opposite one another across the Congo River, the two physically closest capitals of any two countries in the world. We wish more people realized that there are two Congos. While working in the DR Congo Kinshasa mission office, we would frequently get official correspondence destined for the Republic of the Congo, Brazzaville, by mistake. Vestiges of the colonial years, which came to an end in 1960 for the DR Congo, still abound in Kinshasa. This crumbling monument is located outside the main train station in Kinshasa, commemorating 100 years of the, quote, opening of the land by its colonizers. It is easy to tell who is in charge and who is suffering in this dismal scene. Unfortunately, abusive despotism is still just as easy to see today, except that the most cruel oppressors are no longer colonizers, but rather corrupt government leaders and profiteering businessmen. Here are 9 basic points of information about the DR Congo. 1. The DR Congo is the second largest African country in area, slightly smaller than Algeria in North Africa. It is approximately the size of the continental United States, east of the Mississippi River. 2. It is home to vast forests and unique wildlife, including this African gray parrot parked in a tree outside our apartment window. It is reputedly the smartest talking bird in the world and capable of making an amazing variety of sounds. The okapi, gentle cousin to the giraffe with zebra-like stripes on its hinder parts, sadly on the verge of extinction. The elusive mountain gorilla. The bonobo, smarter than a chimpanzee and more closely related to humans. I thought this one was a very handsome fellow, but was less impressed by his manners. When I tried to take his photo, he threw a small object and knocked the camera clean out of my hands. Countless other kinds of monkeys, some of which are very beautiful, many of which are very friendly. But of course, sometimes you can't tell who is friendly and who is not on a first approach. You need to size each other up a bit, face to face. Fortunately, this powerful, all-muscle and no-fat baboon turned out to be friendly. Like a tame puppy, he just wanted Kathleen to pet his back. Afterward, we saw the tragic fate of another baboon that used to wander the grounds, now caged by his keepers in sad, solitary confinement for who knows how long. 3. The DR Congo is among the world's richest countries in natural resources. Despite its great mineral wealth, the DR Congo consistently has the lowest, or nearly the lowest, per capita gross domestic product in the world. 4. The country has fewer paved highways than any comparable country of its population and size in Africa. 5. The Congo River system could provide hydroelectric power to the entire continent of Africa, but only 17% of the population of the Congo has access to electricity. This aging dam on the Shopo River outside of Kisangani was completed in the 1950s by Belgian colonizers shortly before Congo's independence. It no longer supplies enough power for the city. Power does not come on in most residences before 6 p.m. each night. When we returned to Kisangani a few months after this photo was taken, the river had flooded, the turbines and water evacuation facilities were damaged beyond repair, and this city of 2 million people was without power for more than 60 days. 6. At least 70 armed groups are operating in the east of the country. The death toll since 1998 may have reached over 5 million Congolese. There are an estimated 2.7 million internally displaced persons in the DR Congo, and approximately 450,000 Congolese refugees in other nations. 7. The DR Congo is the largest officially French-speaking country in the world. However, only about half the population speaks French. There are approximately 242 other languages spoken, including the 4 government-recognized national languages of Kituba, Lingala, Swahili, and Chiluba. 8. About 80 million people live in the DR Congo. Kinshasa's population is estimated at 15 million or more, approaching 1/4 of the population of the entire country. No official census has been taken for decades, but there is no doubt that Kinshasa is the largest French-speaking city in the world. Most Congolese in Kinshasa live from day to day, rising early each morning to earn something to eat for themselves and their families by hustling for odd jobs. No one gets a free ride. There is no social safety net. Those who cannot find enough to eat starve. Adults with disabilities must fend for themselves. Those who get seriously hurt or sick and can't afford a doctor die. Rural life is usually more sane and wholesome than life in the city, at least for those outside of the war-ravaged central and eastern regions of the country. However, villagers work hard for the little they eat, and money for school, medicine, and basic necessities is scarce. These mothers and children are returning with the food they will cook for dinner or sell to others from their family fields in the forest. 9. As the result of many dedicated Christian missionaries who've labored in the DR Congo since the 19th century, an estimated 80 to 96% of the Congolese people are now Christians. Almost half are Catholic, 20 to 48% Protestant, 2 to 10% Muslim, and 3 to 10% other religions. Only about 1% hold exclusively to traditional African religious beliefs, although those beliefs influence the beliefs of many Christians. This mask of the Ngunda people is worn to represent the authority of the spirits of the earth. These spirits are charged with maintaining social order and are represented by select members of the tribe who appear in costume when, for example, a political chief is inaugurated or buried. The faces on the mask carry different expressions, such as anger, fright, or reprimand, and sometimes take a grotesque or comic form. The white spots represent the ugly traces of smallpox left in the face by that dreaded disease. Leaving this general snapshot of the country as a whole, let's take a brief look at the church yesterday and today. In this photo, taken on February 13, 1986, we see at left David M. Kennedy, former Secretary of the Treasury and U.S. Representative to NATO, and then Special Ambassador of the Church. Next to him is Muchiokuko Banza, one of the first members in the DR Congo. Next to him is Mbui Ntita Bungui, who, like Brother Banza, was converted in Europe and later became one of the first baptized members in the country. Next to him is Oscar W. McConkie, Jr., who was the head legal representative for the church, here on a special visit. After him is Sister Banza, the wife of Brother Muchioko Banza. After him is Jean Hutchings and Sister McConkie, followed by R. Bay Hutchings, head representative of the church in the DR Congo. This photo was taken outside the Intercontinental Hotel, now the Pullman Hotel, in Kinshasa, prior to their departure for the law offices of Gittleman Associates to continue work for the legal recognition of the church. The day before, these people, the Kennedys, the McConkeys, and the Hutchings, had been flown to Badolit, one of the remote ornate palaces of the DR Congo's ruler, Mobutu Sese Seko. There they had had a 4.5 hour banquet discussing the official recognition of the church in the country. A year and a half later, Elder Marvin J. Ashton of the 12 and Elder Alexander B. Morrison of the 70 were accompanied by members of the Limete branch leadership to dedicate the DR Congo, then named Zaire. In his prayer, Elder Ashton specifically described the Congolese as a God-fearing and spiritually sensitive people. Although the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was certainly not among the first Christian denominations in the country, nor is it currently among its fastest-growing churches, it has become a recognizable and increasingly respected presence in the major cities where it is now established. The expansion of the church has been a robust and healthy growth of a steady and enduring kind. This table shows a breakdown of church membership as of the end of 2017. Total membership is currently more than 60,000, an increase of about 60% in the last 4 years. The country already accounts for about 10% of the LDS church membership in Africa and constitutes the largest group of French-speaking members in the world. There are already more stakes in the city of Kinshasa alone, 10, than in all of France, 7. Note that of the total membership in the country shown, about 27,000 are Melchizedek priesthood holders, almost half of the total membership. This reflects not only the high activity rate, but also the high ratio of men to women converts in the DR Congo. By way of contrast, there are only 9,000 or so Relief Society members. The gender ratios of youth and children, by way of contrast, typically raised in the church, are much closer to being even among girls and boys. These are the statistics. In order to give a more meaningful picture of the Congolese saints, we must now look at how they minister and have been ministered to in the one-by-one fashion of the Lord, as President Russell M. Nelson, Elder David A. Bednar, and others have emphasized. Kathleen and I attended a baptismal service where Brother Liete Bienvenu Bolame, then a recent convert, baptized his 2 sweet daughters. At the baptismal service, he spoke of his love for the spirit of order and peace in the church, in contrast to the much livelier services he found in other churches. At the baptismal service, Brother Russell, a member of the bishopric, spoke of how many of his friends he had before being baptized who left him because he no longer drank with them and did the other things he could no longer do as a church member. He spoke of how it might be difficult for the Lietes because many of these friends would now leave them. At one time, Brother Liete's wife was not yet a member. Often the father of the family is the first one to begin attending. Often the father wants to make sure that the common rumors about the church, for example, that we are involved in magic, are not true. Also, the fathers are likely to have spent more time than their wives learning French in school, so they are able to understand church services better. Brother Liete is such a good man. He's been trained as a nurse and is trying so hard to provide for his family, but jobs are scarce, even for the educated. He eventually left his family temporarily for employment in a distant city in hopes to earn enough money that they could join him. We have seen how God answers the prayers of these faithful people, but my heart still yearns for the many who still struggle. This photo was taken on our first Sunday in the Congo. After church services, there were perhaps a dozen non-members who had gathered for instruction. We set up chairs in the chapel courtyard to accommodate everyone. During Gospel Principles class, a young man, probably not 12 years old, had sat behind me with a manual, intently following along on the lesson and raising his hand to volunteer answers. I talked to him afterward. It was his first time attending our church. He came that day with his uncles. He was so serious about learning the gospel. During priesthood meeting, another non-member, perhaps in his 20s, got up and said that he had come to church to see what it was like. He wondered how he could make contact with the missionaries and asked, "What is this Book of Mormon all about?" In contrast with other parts of the world, reading and understanding the Bible deeply for oneself is an important activity for many people, at least for those fortunate enough to get their hands on the scriptures. Kathleen and I taught a family with one of the sister missionaries, while President and Sister Byrell taught 3 individuals with the other one, so we could have time to get to all the people waiting to be taught before dark. The group shown in the middle was waiting their turn to be taught. The first group Sister Bradshaw and I taught included Jonathan, Miriam, and her mother Marceline, who had been widowed some years previously. Miriam's half-brothers in Holland, who were members, had encouraged them to come and learn more about the gospel. We reviewed the lesson they had previously received about the restoration. They were such a wonderful spirit. They set up another appointment with the missionaries for that week, and we said we would see them again next Sunday. Afterward, we met with Peter, a very serious young man who had a baptismal date, but as it turned out, was not ready for baptism at the time of his final interview. He was very serious about making sure that what we taught squared with the Bible. We answered some questions he had about grace and works, about why the Aaronic priesthood was still needed after the time of Christ. In addition, he had understood from his reading of Hebrews 7 that there was no need for anyone besides Jesus Christ himself to serve as a high priest after the order of Melchizedek. Afterward, he was so happy that we'd been able to give him the answers he was looking for. Sister Mutombo was a patient, knowledgeable, and spirit-filled teacher. I love this photo of Kathleen and Marceline at Marceline's baptism a few weeks later, with our sister missionaries, Sister Umba and Sister Mutombo, seated behind them. Incidentally, I once attended a baptism that started more than an hour late. We sang hymns while we were waiting, with Sister Umba as a chorister. During the whole time, Sister Umba, without so much as a glance at the hymn book, called out the number and name of each hymn as we finished the previous one. She seemed to have memorized the entire hymn book. Marceline's son Jonathan was baptized 2 weeks after her own baptism, and I confirmed him in church on the following Sunday. Later, Kathleen received a sweet and unexpected gift of a scarf from Marceline, one of the converts we helped to teach when we began our mission. She had so little of the world's things, so the gift was truly a sacrifice from the heart. Marceline has had her ups and downs since then, but the love and testimony she received is real and enduring. Among her many duties, Kathleen was responsible for making sure that accurate and complete records of convert baptisms and confirmations were entered into the church database. In the Kinshasa mission alone, that amounted to an average 160 to 180 convert baptisms each month. This was one of 3 missions in the DR Congo. She was assisted by a team of volunteers and the assistants to the president, who helped resolve frequently complicated and enigmatic name, address, and family relationship issues prior to data entry. Brother Nene showed here, asked Kathleen for help in locating the baptismal record for his niece, which had been missing for months. Nene told us that because her ward did not have her records, she was not able to make donations or serve in church callings. Kathleen was able to find the record in a stack of incomplete records. Nene was able to fill in the mission information that had stymied the data entry process. Remarkably, even with the large number of baptisms in the mission, the retention rate of new converts is very high. At this conference for the Kinshasa stake, held in May 2018, every seat was full in the main chapel and in other suitable rooms in the building. Some sat outside. We were lucky to get a seat on the stage. Elder Johnny Koch, visiting as a member of the area presidency, commented that an average 1,800 of 2,600 members of the Kinshasa stake attended sacrament meeting each week, the largest percentage he'd ever seen, about 70%. The Kinshasa mission president, Hervé Barrel, asked the full-time missionaries to follow up with every convert baptized since January 2017. He found that 79% were still active, and about 30% were currently serving in church callings. Elder Koch said that so far as he knew, the mission had both the highest number of baptisms and the highest rate of retention in the world. These figures are even more remarkable when you take into consideration how many members must rely on relatively expensive and sometimes slow public transportation in order to travel. In some parts of the city, few if any members own private vehicles. President Byrell told us of a stake conference he attended where the building was full, but there were no cars besides their own in the spacious parking lot. This is not a rare occurrence. After the Kinshasa State Conference, the members of the choir posed for a photograph. Typically, the men in the ward and state choirs wear the same tie and sometimes the same suit, while the women wear matching clothing. The responsibility of singing in the choir is taken seriously, and the result is that music that carries spiritual weight and passion. Here is a short audio sample of what the music we heard that day. After the singing, Elder Koch, who is from Brazil, remarked that he had always thought that the Portuguese was the celestial language, but after hearing the choir, he was now convinced that French is the celestial language for singing. The celestial quality in the singing has nothing to do with musical talent. It is a virtue that springs from the heart, born in joy and gratitude for the blessings of the gospel. It was initially a surprise to me that the rousing songs from the hymn books of the early saints, such as How Firm a Foundation, Redeemer of Israel, 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 God is calling, Now let us rejoice, Praise to the man, High on the mountain top, were among the most frequently sung hymns in the DR Congo. But over time I realized that the sufferings and sacrifices of the early saints resonated deeply because they were now being lived anew by the Congolese pioneers. As they opened their prayers and talks, people often thanked God for the breath of life, feeling sincere gratitude that each day they were still alive to do something good in the world. They pleaded with God to relieve them from oppression and poverty. The poignant French translation of the second verse of Come, Come, Ye Saints cut straight to my heart, and it was hard to sing the French version of Hark All Ye Nations without choking up over the line in the French version that proclaimed the miracle of full-time missionaries laboring in wards and stakes in so many places in the heart of Africa. Quote, we work everywhere today. The joy of singing, of course, was not reserved just for official church meetings, but sometimes was a spontaneous expression of love, joy, and worship before, during, and after other kinds of activities. One Saturday morning, we walked onto the grounds of the Kinshasa City Jail for a Helping Hands project. This young woman, Naomi Pichu, was the only sister who joined the group. She has plans to serve a mission in 2 years when she finishes school. I admired her pluck and hard work. We had brought some food with us onto the grounds to give to the prisoners. As in Joseph Smith's day, hospitals and prisons often rely on family or the charity of others to keep the inmates fed. Some cleaned up debris on the grounds, which was piled very high in places. Here Brother Eloy, a counselor in the bishopric, carts out papers destined for a burn pile. We discovered whole rooms and stairways filled floor to ceiling with such papers. After returning to the chapel for a group photo, everyone sang a vigorous round of The World Has Need of Willing Men.
Ne restons pas en spectateurs, mais allons élitants. Chantons les balles avec ardeur, pour le Seigneur travaillons. Tous unis et pleins d'ardeur travaillons, et le cœur rempli de sol et chantons, la tâche est là, n'hésitons pas, pour le Seigneur travaillons.
To close this section of the presentation, we will hear Elder Hugh Anise Madu Lokpo, one of our beloved assistants to the President, share a song of his own composition, Sur le chemin du vrai bonheur, on the path to true happiness.
Venez, allons, voici le chemin qui mène à la joie de tous les saints. Ici vous trouverez le bonheur, la vie et la paix dans votre cœur. Alléluia, il nous a donné le chemin de la vérité. Il nous invite, notre Sauveur, sur le chemin